Back to My Garden, episode 34.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Attention gardeners, do you love perennial flowers? Get a free online catalog and 10% off your first order of bulbs at Bloomin' Bulbs. I set up a special link just for podcast listeners. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/bulb. Check it out. Do you want to be on the front edge of gardening trends and have one of the best gardens in your city, town, or state? Check out aquaponics. Can you really grow an incredible garden powered by fish? Find out how and get the details and secrets at www.backtomygarden.com/fish. Coming up at halfway through the podcast, I have an incredible bonus just for people who love vegetable gardening, so stay tuned. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another episode of Back to My Garden. And today, something completely different for you. I want you to meet my friend Guy. Guy is the behind the scenes at combatfarming.com, and his mission is to give people the knowledge and skills to be self-reliant concerning the personal food production. Just like our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were back in the day. Envision 1880s technology with 21st century strategy. Combat farming was developed alongside Special Forces troops working on global agriculture projects. You got to see his website to understand the scope of what I'm talking about. From San Antonio, Texas / Des Moines, Iowa, please meet Guy Ewald. Guy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Very excited. I want to hear your stories, and our listeners want to get to know you. Take a minute or two and just share with us a little bit about your background and how you got into farming and gardening.
Farming, really, I was born into it. I'm a third-generation farmer from the upper Midwest. We still have our farm in Minnesota. And really, I was just born into it. Really, the combat farming thing started when we started working with special operations in Afghanistan, and the guys on the teams would call us the farmers, and then all of a sudden we were called the combat farmers, and I was the leader, so I was the combat farmer. So that's kind of how it started.
Fantastic. For those of you driving in your car listening to me and Guy talk, please keep both hands on the wheel. I'm going to have all the show notes up on the blog at backtomygarden.com/34. Make sure you follow Guy on Twitter at The Combat Farmer. Check out his blog at www.combatfarming.com and his main corporate site at fafdevelopments.com. And I'll have all those links up there. I'm trying to figure out where we're going to start on this conversation, Guy. How about we talk about your trip over to Afghanistan, working over there? What were some of the unique experiences and challenges you had in the field over there?
There was certainly a lot of them, whether it's security issues or just getting people to understand what you're really trying to do, or the bureaucracy when you're working with the State Department or different governments or different militaries, a whole host of things. But I went over there in 2004 and actually was in Afghanistan pretty much full time for 7 years. Originally, we went over to work on some State Department projects. I remember the first one I went over for was, we need you over here to just do something, just get something done. And that was actually a grape and pomegranate project, which I didn't even know what pomegranates were. And certainly farming is, you learn a lot of things on the go, and once you have the basics of farming, you just kind of pick things up. And by the time I left, I was the so-called pomegranate expert. So from the State Department, we started working with different militaries under the NATO umbrella. We ended up working with special operations and different things where we would set up small farms. Really, they were large gardens outside of their small bases, and as they moved, we set up new gardens, and it was really a good link for our special operations to get to know the village people, and certainly the knowledge gained by the local farmers was pretty incredible too, because they've been at war for so long that a lot of the farmers were in refugee camps their whole life, so they really have lost the institutional knowledge of gardening and farming and what crops would grow and in the area. And we were just there as farmers to work with them, train them, utilize things that they had already in their area, and as things stabilize in the area, we kind of move off to the next area. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
You have this amazing photo on your blog of a raised garden. We have a lot of raised bed gardeners listeners, but this raised bed garden is different than anything I've ever seen. It's built from sandbags. And there's a picture of a local Afghani gardener. Can you tell us the backstory of that? I know it's pretty significant.
Sir, every garden that we put in was very unique to the area, whether it's depending on what elevation it was, how much rainfall, and of course what materials he had available to build some of these things. This particular one you're talking about, the only thing that we could find to kind of keep keep the garden together was sandbags from, it's probably just filled with dirt to kind of put this together. We utilized anything that was available in the area. So in that particular case, it was sandbags, which was probably part of the fortifying a different base, whether it's for the Afghan military or our military.
The next time I order lumber from the local lumber yard that gets delivered for my next raised garden bed, I'll never complain about it being crooked. After imagining the work that went into filling hundreds of sandbags to build a raised garden bed, it's an amazing photo.
Thanks.
So you went over knowing nothing about pomegranates. You leave Afghanistan as a pomegranate expert. What else kind of grew over there? Because we always kind of think of it as an extremely dry region. But then again, I guess San Antonio's fairly dry too.
Well, actually, my roots started in our home farm in southern Minnesota. So we have the kind of soil that you just drop the seed on the ground and it grows. So irrigation and all that is things that you just pick up over time. In Afghanistan, it certainly is dry and hot part of the year, but a lot of people forget about the Afghanistan does have a winter, and they do get a fair amount of snow in the mountains. So they do have a lot of mountain runoff. And actually, with the amount of tillable land in Afghanistan and the amount of water they get, whether it be some rain, mostly snow melt, there's plenty of moisture if they could just, conserve it to when they need it, whether it's dams or different things like that. And a lot of people think the sand is just, or the soil is just sand, which that's not the case. We worked in the different valleys and things where the soil was relatively good. I mean, it ranged from a clay loam to a kind of a clay sandy loam, different things like that. So the actual soil structure was pretty decent. Certainly they were depleted with some of the nutrients and things like that, but you put a little water on it and just about anything grew there. Of course, some of the illegal things, and we tried our best to encourage the self-sustaining things, whether it's corn or cauliflower or if they had a few cows or sheep or goats. So that was our mission there.
Yeah, I guess getting off the opium trade from growing poppies, if they're self-sufficient, there's less appeal as a cash crop if they can grow everything their family needs.
Certainly, that's exactly what it was. Is the marijuana and the poppy were the cash crop there, and it was difficult in some cases, but a lot of it is if you could produce an example. We went to one area. We didn't bring anything new. We didn't try to bring anything new to an area because our time was limited there. They had to be self-sufficient when we left. A little bit of manure management, things like that. We were able to increase their cauliflower harvest by 300%. That makes a huge difference when you're competing with poppy. If it's just a so-so crop competing with poppy, it's very difficult. But when you can increase the quantity and quality of a crop, the farmer sure took note, and it made a big difference.
So you go over 2004, and you were there how many years? 6?
7.
7 years, almost 2 full university educations. And you come home, and now you've got all this experience under the most ridiculous conditions. Tell us a little bit about the philosophy of combat farming and what you're now doing in North America.
With combat farming, certainly, a few people knew the combat farming story, and it really started off on this one where I kind of told the story of, the progression of how things happened and what we did there. And the original blog had over 13,000 people view it before it was time for it to go down. But 7 years was a long time there, and certainly learned a lot. As far as the U.S. part of it now, I'm really just trying to get out what's possible. You brought it up in the beginning of the 1880s agriculture, and that's what we were really pushing there. Something before the gas engine, before electricity, because they just don't have it. Certainly they have gas and diesel fuel, but it's very expensive, whether they're running a pump, no electricity. So it started really making me think of where my grandfather started in our home farm in Minnesota, and a lot of those skills that we've just plain lost, because now you just jump in your four-wheel drive tractor and till 100 acres in a few hours, and really lost some of the skills that our forefathers had. So that's really the what I'm trying to promote with the combat farming website. Certainly on our FAF development website, where we do current agriculture. And, so really our range of agriculture is from 1880s to, modern technology, current day agriculture. So really the combat farming is a smaller scale, whether it's a large garden, a small acreage, something like that, promoting, the 1880s aspect of it, what you can really do without technology. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the direction it's going.
My great-grandfather farmed in North Dakota, and my grandfather farmed in Manitoba. And, they had, a couple of sections, And now, what is it? A combine's 150 grand? Is it any wonder nobody gets into farming anymore?
No, it's much more than that. So,
of course, the university education is getting up there too. So the idea of getting a pot and some dirt and starting a little tomato and some lettuce is very accessible to most people.
No, that's right. And, that is certainly some of the things that I'm working on is my tomatoes in the pot didn't do that well this year, and I'm trying to figure out why. I'm kind of used to, whether it's a few hundred feet of land or, several hundred acres of land, doing things that way. So smaller scale has certainly been a learning experience for me. So, and it's farming, you learn something different every day, whether it's a seed variety or different kinds of plants or the weather or anything. So you never quit learning.
You spent 7 years helping other people plant gardens and farm. Are you able to garden this year?
Certainly. Started off in February in Texas, and then when the spring broke here in the upper Midwest, planted one in Iowa, and also near our home farm in southern Minnesota. But it's just a really big pumpkin patch that I'm growing this year.
Nice. My neighbor's a pumpkin farmer.
Okay, I got a thing or two to learn about pumpkins. They tried something new. Instead of keeping the ground bare, I used white clover as a living cover crop. And it was a little challenging this year, but I'm learning.
Do you have deer? Probably a lot of deer, right?
Not so much right there, but there are a lot of deer in the area.
That's my neighbor's biggest problem, is the pumpkins get ripe in late September, early October, and the deers go out into the fields and smash the pumpkins and eat the inside.
Is that right?
And when the deer eat, they eat crazy, like volume, and they get sick, and they get diarrhea, and the deer get sick all over the place out in the pumpkin patches. So they have to use the different electronic methods to try to keep the deer out of the pumpkin patch.
Wow. I think my biggest problem this year is keeping the rabbits out because we're kind of in a dry spell now, and I see a couple pumpkins that didn't make it, and it didn't dawn upon me that the rabbits might be chewing on the pumpkins to get a drink, so I'm not sure. So
I wanted to ask you about that because you've got roots in Texas, but you have friends all over. The drought's pretty brutal, isn't it, in Texas?
Say that again,
The drought is pretty brutal in Texas.
Yeah, it's been, but this year it has let up a little bit, so it's probably a little bit more back to a normal year. Mm-hmm. Southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, where we have our farms, it was extremely wet spring, but now the last 30 days, I don't think it's rained a half inch, so it's actually probably as dry in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa as it is in Texas right now. So,
when you were over in Afghanistan, was drought resistant or heat tolerant a big part of the design of gardens and farms?
Certainly, we used a lot of their varieties that they've used over the years. There was a lot of promotion of people wanting to bring in hybrid seeds, and we really stayed away from that because when you have a farmer that is not, doesn't have a lot of education, is not literate, he sees a nice, whatever it is, whether it's a pumpkin or something, it looks nice, he's going to save the seed out of it. So we stayed away. We just stayed with the heirloom seeds that they've grown and just trying to do a little bit better. Certainly, that's what was talked about. But a lot of the areas that we were in, it was just really the problem with irrigation management more than anything, because if they would get their water, they would overwater everything, anticipating they might miss their next water cycle or things like that. So really a lot of the crops that we looked at, a lot of the disease were more of, soggy fields and different things like that, just because they were actually over irrigating them.
Wow. Yeah. That's how you eat as a teenager. You never know when you're going to eat next, so you eat as much as you can eat as a teenager.
Yeah.
My friend was lamenting he asked his teenager, where does cheese come from? And picture your typical 14-year-old boy, right? He says, comes from the fridge. It's in slices wrapped in plastic. And he realized the kid had never seen a cow when he was 14 years old. I guess in Afghanistan, you kind of get a real feel for how much we take our life for granted in North America.
Yeah, you certainly do. And every time I came back, I just appreciated everything here so much. And really, it's, any place here in North America, it's just, it's pretty easy, and you really need to go someplace like that for a while to really appreciate what we really have here.
Other than pumpkins, is there anything you're growing this year that is working quite well, or is there anything that's frustrating you?
Growing some giant sunflowers too. I guess the pumpkins, I'm trying to grow some of those state fair winners. So my goal is, and I've never grown a pumpkin up to 100 pounds, so I want to get one over 100 pounds this year. That's going okay so far. Planted some heirloom corn, non-hybrid corn. That's going okay. I'm trying some different methods with that too. I'm actually trying to use the white clover as a cover crop and also the nitrogen source, but that's not going that well either. So we planted, different things like tomatoes and squash and some of the other things. They're all doing fine. Like I said, here in Iowa and Minnesota, you just drop the seed in the ground and it just grows. So most of that stuff is pretty easy to grow.
In your pumpkin strategy, are you allowed to use dairy to feed them?
I didn't, but I actually read something on that. I'm not entering into any state fair this year. Actually, here at the Iowa State Fair, they've had pumpkins, I think up to 1,200 pounds, and they grow them on a pallet. It's just unbelievable how big they can get them. But I've always been fascinated. I'm sure they use anything and everything on some of those.
Yeah, the old whole cream. A lot of the dairy farmers had the extra fat in the dairy.
So do they just dump it on the main root, or what do they do?
Well, it's almost like they feed it through intravenous almost.
Oh, really?
Like the plant sucks it up through the vine system if you tap a vein, so to speak. I have a video that my wife has. The guy took a picture every hour for the entire season using one of those stop cameras.
Wow.
I'll put it up on the blog.
Oh, that'd be great.
They showed it at the very end. It went from literally a seed in the dirt, and it's about a 6-minute video, and it ended up around 600 or 700 pounds on a pallet.
Wow.
I don't think they're pie pumpkins, that's for sure. They're pretty ugly, but they serve a purpose.
Yeah. Actually, with my pumpkin patch in Minnesota, my goal is, because it's in a small town of about 250 people, I wanted to get and it's 2 city lots, which is probably like a sixth of a block. So it's a fair-sized pumpkin patch. I wanted to have all the kids come this fall with their costumes on, and give every kid that wears a costume, give them a pumpkin, and kind of make a fun event out of it.
Nice. That's how you give back and get noticed. Out here, the sunflowers are so tall, they do a maze in the sunflowers.
Oh, is that right?
They just, like in October, they'll cut a maze. And
Yeah.
And it's like a haunted house in the sunflower field.
Awesome.
I have a weakness for sunflower. Well, I grew up in Manitoba, so you eat them right off the head. And we're growing some mammoth sunflowers.
Okay.
Some Fothergill. And I have a bit of a soil problem. My nitrogen is way too low, and the sunflowers are very unhappy where they are.
Okay. How big are your mammoth sunflowers? Because I think that's a variety I planted too.
Last year, they were about 7 feet tall with a head about 14 inches across. And this, so far late this year.
Okay.
Really wet July. You heard about that polar vortex.
Yeah.
We just have had the same weather, just kind of cool and gray and rainy.
Okay.
Everything has wet feet. They're not happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors and then come back and play 5 quick questions. This episode of Back to My Garden is sponsored by Coffee Royalty. Can you really lose 5, 10, even 20 pounds or more just by switching your coffee or tea? Find out how to drink it for free at www.backtomygarden.com/coffee. Are you concerned about toxic chemicals, GMOs, and frankenfood? Don't panic. Grow organic. Discover my new resource for organic gardening. Go to www.backtomygarden.com/myorganic. Do you love homegrown tomatoes? So do I. Free Report reveals the 5 dirt cheap tools I use to grow 22 types of heirloom tomatoes, including my secret soil booster. Download your copy for free today at www.backtomygarden.com/free report. Very good. Well, I looked at the clock. Our time is flashing by. It's the time in the show when we play a game called 5 Quick Questions. This is your chance to share your wisdom and experience with rookie gardeners. Are you ready to play?
Okay.
Question number 1. In your opinion, what do you think stops most people from trying gardening?
I think probably the poor results they had, if it was on a small scale or something like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with timing, whether they don't really know when to plant or maybe how to plant or, what the plant really needs, whether it needs a little more sunshine or different things like that. So I think that's probably the biggest one is the some poor results. And I want to encourage everybody just to try it. Try small. I know it gets kind of frustrating if you don't have a win right out of the bat, but keep trying, even if it's small.
You go over to Afghanistan, you know nothing about pomegranates. Did you ever have anything that didn't grow over there?
Certainly.
Then you didn't cry and give up.
No, we couldn't. The gun was to our head, so to speak.
I understand. Question number 2. You've been around farmers and gardeners a long time. What is the single best piece of gardening advice that you've ever received?
Probably the best was when you come into a new area that you can't be a know-it-all. An example I have is an example in Afghanistan. You're talking to these old farmers that are probably 60, 70 years old, and you're trying to introduce some new ideas. You can't tell them that's the newest, the greatest, the latest. It's the only way to go, and your ideas are dumb. You can't do that, no matter what. So, in fact, the old farmers made sure that they were going to be right, and I think they over-fertilized. It was actually a corn demonstration. They over-fertilized the corn, so it kind of burnt off. So you don't want to do that. You just you want to learn and try some new things and go from there.
Excellent. We're lucky we have the internet now to learn about gardening. It's a huge place. I mean, one generation ago, we would have to go to the library. And for you kids listening, that's a big building with books in it. And you had to take out a book and hope that the answer was somewhere in the book. Can you suggest, Guy, one or two good websites for novice gardeners that you like to recommend? Certainly,
a good place to start for a beginning gardener would be probably just go to Google and Google whatever state you're in, or if you're in Canada, or just try to get some example, just like here in Iowa, just Iowa State University Extension, and you could just Google gardening or something like that. Or the same for Texas or Minnesota, and I actually did a little bit on Ontario too. So really, it's just some of the universities within the state. They give you some of the basic gardening, what crops grow there, some general information about your soil, general information about rainfall, just general information like that.
Fantastic. That's taxpayer dollars at work. There's a lot of good resources.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. Question number 4, Guy. I'm a book reader. Can you recommend your favorite gardening book?
Probably my favorite book for beginning, and we kind of used it as a textbook somewhat, was Back to Basics. It's a very generic, very low-level entry one. Mm-hmm. And it does have a lot of good ideas, and it has a lot of ideas that kind of work with what we're doing on the combat farming, the 1880s agriculture, low-tech ideas, things that you can, look back to see where things were, 50 years ago or, even past. So that book, there's a lot of good information. It's not in real detail, but it's a good place to start.
Excellent. Do you have an author on that?
Yes, I do. Is it Gehring? It's Gehring.
Excellent.
It's a green book, and it looks like they're in the 3rd edition right now.
I heard you stretch and reach to the library.
Yeah, I did.
That makes me smile, because the kids now would punch some keys on their iPhone, except it doesn't work in a power failure.
That's right. Yeah. That's why you got to have you got to know your 1880s agriculture.
Brilliant. And finally, question 5. This is a bit of a fun one. What's the number one thing every gardener should try to grow next season?
The thing that everyone should try to grow is what they like to eat.
Nice.
Whether it's tomatoes or peppers. I personally don't like peppers. Try growing that. Try learning as much about that. And if you just grow it in a little 4x4 raised bed garden, or just in your backyard, just grow what you like, because or someone in your family that they really like to eat. So
nice. For those of you driving, listening, jogging, make sure you head over to the show notes. Follow Guy on Twitter at The Combat Farmer. Check out his site at combatfarming.com and fafdevelopments.com. Guy, you've been an amazing guest. I'm going to give you the last word today. Do you have either a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement for our gardeners out there on their adventures and journeys in gardening?
I think for anybody new into farming, gardening, start small and just keep trying. You're not gonna learn everything all at once, so just keep trying. I guess that's the thing. Just start small, keep trying.
Fantastic. Guy, thanks for being on the show today.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.